Hi, my name is Natasha Rothwell, and you're listening to In Her Words.
Everyone has a story. Welcome to In Her Words, a podcast from women in entertainment where female creatives and allies share their stories in their own words.
This is a dedicated space centered on how to harness creativity for inspiring and impactful projects in the ever-changing landscape of entertainment.
I'm Renee Rossi.
I'm Gretchen McCourt.
And this is In Her Words.
Welcome to In Her Words and our conversation with the amazing Natasha Rothwell. She's coming off of season 3 of White Lotus, where she again gave us the beloved Belinda. We talk about writing and producing and not staying in your lane. We shout out to the cousin text chain and people talking about a TikTok creator who is now working with Natasha on an exciting project. This was such a fun conversation, and I am so happy to have met Natasha. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this today. We're huge fans. We love Belinda. Hannah and I talk about your character all the time. And when you guys reached out, we were so excited for you to join the podcast and us get to speak with you.
No, I'm so excited to be here. I love Belinda just as much as everybody else. So,
has it just been such a fun whirlwind ride this winter and spring with everything that's been going on with White Lotus and just Belinda getting to be the playthrough character? We were all so excited.
Oh, it has been surreal. That's the only word I can come up with any amount of confidence. It's surreal. Both as someone who said goodbye to a character and had no idea that there would be a second chapter for her. And also just as an actor who is just never thought that this kind of moment would be a part of my story either.
It's so exciting. I'm glad it's as exciting for you as it is for us as viewers. I have so many questions I want to talk to you about White Lotus and Mike White and working with Issa Rae. But I want to start a little bit even before that. Tell us how you decided that you wanted to be in front of the camera. And I'm also very curious because you really started writing and producing right away.
Yeah.
So, I guess I need to ask in front of and behind the camera, right? how it all came to be. Did you come from a creative family? Did you always know you wanted to do this?
Yeah, I was always performative. I grew up as an Air Force brat. I have 2 sisters and a brother, and went to 2 high schools, 2 middle schools, 2 elementary schools. And my dad was an early technological adapter. And so he had the family camcorder that was the size of a giant boombox. And I was constantly in front of it. And I think I've always had sort of like the natural calling to perform and to tell stories, really. And I was always kind of naturally funny. I was an observer of behavior, and I also grew up in the church, and so I was cracking jokes and making my siblings laugh at inappropriate times, and my mom giving me the death stare down the pew of just like, quit it, we know it's you. And my love of storytelling was just, nurtured at a very young age. And because of the military and the moves at all of the schools that I went to, I was drawn to the theater programs because, much like in real life, theater is one of the most welcoming communities. And when you're the new kid and you're looking for the softest place to land, for me, it was the theater department. And so, I majored in theater in college, and I came up in a time where there weren't really a ton of multi-hyphenates. And so I thought I had to pick a lane. And I always loved to write. And so the first lane I chose was journalism, if you can believe that. And I knew that I didn't want to be limited by, the AP style. And I had much more creative dreams. And I knew I was kind of betraying myself in being a majoring in journalism initially in college. And then I switched up to theater, and everything kind of was smoothly after that.
Did you have anyone that, that helped guide you, that you were looking at, that, that you saw as somebody that had the career and had the, what you wanted, whether it was in writing and moving from journalism to creative writing, or even your producing and acting pieces? Did you see any role models out there for yourself?
There were some, but I think that's a great way to sort of talk about why I ended up sort of loving producing and
Mhm.
why writing was so important, it's because of representation and visibility. I didn't see a ton of people who looked like
Mhm.
me that I could point to and say, oh, I could do this too. And the few that were there were hugely impactful. You know, Whoopi Goldberg, for one, Moms Mabley,
Mm.
but namely Nell
Mhm.
Carter. I watched Give Me a
Oh
Break.
my gosh, yes,
And I
yes.
was like, here's this plus size black baddie. She might be in like the domicile sort of like subservient role, but she's running the house. She was so funny and so emotive. And I just remember being like, oh, okay, I can do that. And mind you, she was in a long line of comic heroes of mine, like Carol
Mhm.
Burnett, Lily Tomlin, um, Carol
You
Channing.
are much too young to be speaking about my world.
But these were the
Yeah.
shows that spoke to me. I mean, I watched Laugh-In. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
would watch and I was just like, this is so cool. Like you could do comedy about,
Like
yeah,
sketch,
sketch
yeah.
and it was about politics at the same time. It was very sort of
Mhm.
smart comedy Laugh-In. And so I knew for me, I wanted to tell stories and I wanted to feel like I had a voice that people wanted to listen to. And I found that voice, through college and after college in New York, just sort of honing it. But I resisted comedy for a very long time, but it definitely was my entry point into the industry. And I
Mhm.
love it deeply. It's a huge part of who I am. But being able to flex both of those muscles, being classically trained in drama, but also being able to use comedy has been sort of the hallmark of my career, as an adult.
Yeah, and I think we get to see that definitely more in Belinda this season, where there is some funny and there's some sassiness and some
Yeah.
sharpness to her that is, that's so great. But when I was doing research and looking and the Insecure and how funny it was and the different pieces, it's very rare, I should say, that we get to see somebody bounce back and forth like that, with being so funny and Insecure and on that show for, oh my gosh, 5 seasons, which is
Yeah.
just so long now. But then that strength and that sadness and everything that you bring to this Belinda character, we get to see that mix. I think that's a treat. That's a
Yeah.
treat for us. Tell us about working with Issa. She did an event with us with Women in Entertainment. She's a friend of our organization, and I tell people all the time, one of the most stunningly beautiful
I
people.
mean,
Oh, like leaves you speechless when you see her in real life.
yeah. And
I don't even know. I'm like, she did this wonderful. We were doing an event with the Writers Guild, and she showed us. Gosh, it was 2019, I think. So she showed us the first 2 or 3 episodes of that season at a live event at the
wow.
ArcLight in Hollywood, and came and spoke about it, and so just it was super fun. But tell us about working with her and that team, and kind of what you said, what you were looking for. You were you were living it in real life on that show, and with her and that team.
Yeah, I mean, it was a dream come true. And I think there was a real desire on my part to show up for her when I first met her in a way that had nothing to do with acting. I was hired as a
Mhm.
writer first. Kelly didn't
Oh,
even
okay.
exist as a character. And I had just come off of Saturday Night Live, and um, I knew it was my first sort of scripted writer's room, and I wanted very badly to learn the craft of writing and really be a student of it and confront my imposter syndrome head on, because while I've written for other people and myself a ton, I'd never written in this capacity at that
Mm.
level, being at
Mhm.
HBO. And it was one of the things, it's a little known fact that I was the first hire for the show. I had Zoomed with
Oh,
them. Yeah, I
really?
was the first writer's room hire. And I was in New York and they were in LA. And I was in my studio apartment in Brooklyn, and I had moved all of my shit to one side of the room to make it look like an office. And I was like business on top and pajama bottoms and I was like just trying to show up in a way. And it was beautifully awkward in a way that we connected because we were very similar in that respect. And to meet her is to love her, like, and she's beautiful inside and out and just so smart and younger than me. So I was like looking up to her, and so it was I was like, oh wow, this is interesting, and had
Mhm.
so much to learn from her. And she really did see me as a whole creator. I think I came in and I thought I was hiding other aspects of my talent. And she was just like, no, you're going to produce on the show. You're going to be Kelly on the show. She saw all of me. And so forever indebted to her and to Prentice Penny, who is her co-showrunner, for allowing me to be a full artist in their presence and not just, staying in one lane. And I was very much committed to that. I was never jockeying to be on the show. I was like, I'm a neurospicy kind of, people pleaser. So I was like, I want to be a writer. And I had my blinders on and they're like, hey, we know you do other stuff. The gig is up. Like, but I love her so much. And she continues to be a dear friend and cheering me on from afar. And I do likewise. And we're on a text chain together and we get to just to support each other. And I think, you understand in this industry as women, we have to support each other and be allies for each other and advocates for each other. And I definitely was taking notes for those 5 seasons and, I'm hoping to continue to replicate that with my own production company.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit. I think it's so helpful for people listening. We have so many students and so many people, really starting their careers to dig a little deeper into what you were saying of she saw all of you.
Yeah.
You wanted to stay in that writing lane and somebody is kind of pulling you out and you had to be pretty vulnerable in that.
Yeah.
How can you, what advice do you share now that, maybe would have helped you and your young, your baby self get through that? But other people, how do you give advice that helps them say, I really can do this.
Yeah.
Can do that especially when someone's helping you to do that.
Yeah. Well, I love this question for so many reasons. One, a part of my story is that I was a high school theater teacher for 4 years in the Bronx while I was working in New York and hustling. And so I love students and I still express that through mentorship in LA now. And so a lot of times those that I talk to that are just like, how do you let yourself be seen without, appearing like, you're doing too much or that you might be too much. And I think the answer in the question, you aren't too much, you're enough. And you're allowed to show up as yourself and allow yourself to be fully seen. And I think it is special and unfortunately rare to have folks like Issa and Prentice who can get past your own, other people's sort of getting out of their own way, like helping others get out of their own way is essentially what she did. And she created a safe space. And I think that's first and foremost, you have to be in an environment where you feel safe, but you also have to take risks. Not every space is going to be as beautiful as the Insecure writers' room where I felt I could be my full self. But it allowed me to show up in subsequent writers' rooms and subsequent environments as myself fully and owning all aspects of my hyphenates. I think it was a podcast with Roxane Gay where she was talking about, someone wanted to truncate all her titles when they were announcing her for some event. And she said, absolutely not. She was just like, every one of those hyphenates I have earned and I'm proud of. And that was like another moment of just like, oh yeah, I can be all of those things. And again, like I said, I didn't come up in the era of where there were multi-hyphenates or that was allowed. You kind of had to pick a lane. And so to be able to evolve into a space where I can do all of those things and explore them, it's just a gift. And my advice to those listening that are students and trying to find their voice, don't limit yourself to one avenue that you think you're supposed to do. Having been in therapy for 20 plus years, the should and supposed to are words that I avoid at all costs because there is no should, there is no supposed to, there's just right now and what your needs are and how you feel like you can best express the gifts you've been given. And so, find environments that feel safe. And if you are in ones that don't feel safe, have the courage and bravery to know that you're enough even in those spaces.
No, that's great advice. That is great advice. And I love your perspective on the multi-hyphenate because I do feel like we're, very quickly moving out of that where they're separate titles and they're all there and you use them all equally or all appropriately. And it doesn't have to be, well, I kind of wrote this thing once a long time ago.
Yeah.
It's there.
It's there. Don't apologize. I remember seeing this, in the Backstage magazine in New York, and now I'm dating myself. There was this article that said, if you want to be a writer, then write, you know, and that is sort of like the long and the short of it, where it's just like, you don't have to wait to get a paycheck for the vocation you're pursuing to call yourself that. And I did that for a long time. I didn't call myself a writer until I was on SNL, and I had written prior because I thought someone else had to call me that before I could own it. And I was like,
someone else had to give it to you.
That's right. And I had outsourced that power, and it blew my mind. I was like, oh my God, what are the other things that I am that I'm just waiting for someone else to recognize? And I'm giving, what other power am I giving away? And so it's definitely been sort of a beautiful journey in sort of coming into my own. And it's exciting to be in this space at this time with this kind of courage. And so I'm excited for what's next. And, who knows what other hyphenates might join the list.
Exactly. Okay, so you have this career in comedy. You're so well known for all of these. And then Mike White comes knocking.
Oh, boy.
So tell us about that, because obviously the show is not known for comedy. And one of the things I love White Lotus, everyone loves White Lotus, but also the backstories, the behind the scenes, I think one of and I don't know why I'm not used to it yet, but the crazy friendship, loving pictures after the fact are still so surprising, because you guys are so good. You're so good on the show that I'm like, they can't possibly be friends.
I know. When people see me and John, who plays Greg, they're just like, why is she with him? I'm like, because he's awesome.
Stop smiling at her. You don't mean it.
I love that so much. Oh, man.
So tell us about that, back in season 1, but just this whole process of getting involved and what you thought this crazy show was when it was first presented. I can't even imagine that story.
It was wild. So back in season 1, pre-season 1, we were on lockdown. This was COVID, pre-vaccination.
Okay.
Like wiping down groceries kind of time. And my agent was just like, Mike White would love to meet with you. And I was a fan of his work, like, for a long time. Chuck and Buck, I'm talking Enlightened. He wrote on Freaks and Geeks, which was one of my favorite shows. And
Ned Schneebly.
Yes. and for him to want to talk to me, that in and of itself, I was like, I'm taking this call. I don't know what it's about, but let's just do it. And my agent was just like, yeah, he's, they're working on the show, and he just wants to chat to you to see if you might be right for this character he's thinking about. Didn't read his script, but I just knew I loved him enough to want to just be across from him. And so we hopped on Zoom and we chatted and laughed. And then he's just like, he talked about the character briefly, and then we got off, and that was it. It wasn't an audition. It was just a conversation. And I didn't know that it was even being considered for, I thought the next step would be an audition, right? And then a few days passed, and my agent's just like, you got the part. I was like, huh? I was like, what do you mean? And he really would love for you to play Belinda. And I had reservations that were leveled. One, did I want to leave my house? I was terrified, basically COVID was hunting plus size ladies for sport. And I was like, I do not want to leave, and who's going to take care of my dog, and it was just a lot. And then also it was a character where she is in a subservient position in a very homogenous world, as the only woman of color, and I didn't want to perpetuate a trope or a stereotype. And so I very much leaned into my therapist being like, speak your needs. And I told my agent, I was like, I'd really love to talk to Mike about the character and the specific concern I have. Would he be willing to, in the process of working on this production, chat with me about that? And I had, I was a producer on Insecure at this time, and I had just gotten a screenplay into Sundance, and he's a huge relationship with Sundance as well. So I was like, let him know, I'm a writer, I'm not, just an actor trying to jockey for more screen time. I just want to make sure that she has 10 toes down and is a fully fledged character. And the same day my agent got back, he was like, he would love to. He's so excited to talk to you about this. And so I was like, tell him I'm in. And that's kind of how it came about. And I had no idea what to expect. because of the COVID protocols, like we weren't allowed to leave the actual location.
But you did, I was going to say, you did film on location, right? It was real.
It was really Hawaii. Like we were there, but we weren't allowed to leave the property. Like it was like, it was like a COVID bubble. Our key cards to our hotel room stopped working if we went so far away. Like it was crazy.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, and Hawaii was extra strict.
Extra strict. And so that created this really intense family. And I had no idea, you know, Steve Zahn and Connie Britton would be in my bubble, but there we were.
Like, who is your bubble? Because let me tell you about mine.
Exactly. I was like, I got her. My bubble can beat your bubble. And then, I thought it was done. I thought it was done after that and had no idea that Belinda would be back. And I was over the moon when, you know, Mike reached out. I was just like, I will follow you to the ends of the earth. Like, where, say when. And yeah, I'm just so grateful.
When he's working on the shows, does he have, and maybe he doesn't share this, does he have ideas of who is going to be a through character and who's and coming back? Like you said, you had no idea from season 1 and season 2 that Belinda would be in season 3.
Yeah, I mean, if he does, he certainly doesn't share that with me. I mean, our collaboration is just Belinda specific. But so I sit in awe of where the story goes as well. And I remember when I got the scripts for season 3, I binge watched them. I just read them all in one sitting. And I was just, my dog was like, is everything okay? Because I was like, like I was vocalizing the entire time. And so, yeah, I never know where he's going to take the story next. And I think that's why people are so in love with his work, because it's a journey. You strap in and you're like, let's go. We don't know where it's headed. And he's just so good at it. He's just so good at it.
And the concerns that you voiced, like you said, from talking to him initially, I mean, that's really what White Lotus is about.
Yeah.
And that through, so how, you know, was that something that you saw glimpses of it from the beginning, where that, you know, just that social narrative and that, you know, that really like, let's look at what our society looks like. Let's look at, you know, class distinction. Let's look at all of these things that he does just, I mean, so wonderfully and so creatively.
Yeah.
You know, did that ease your concerns? Did you really lean into that? Because it is, I mean, it's just so well done.
It's so well done. And I think that because I knew what the story was, I wanted to make sure that we could use Belinda in the right way. And a perfect example is season 1. You know, we sat down and we literally went page by page, every single scene of Belinda's. And there's small, subtle things that I would pitch. I would say, Mike, you know, a Black woman is going to talk different to her son than her client. And he had written all of the sort of, and it's saying the same words, but it's the intonation, it's the code switching. And so it was like, let's say the same thing, but let's put it in her own vernacular. So that way, when she's on the phone with her son in the parking lot, we get to hear her guard down, you know, and then we get to see her guard up when she's at work. And that tells a subtle story of what it's like to move in these spaces. And so I wanted to link arms with him and be a co-conspirator in executing his goals for talking about class in this way. And it's not a beat the Bible on the head kind of way. It's these subtle sort of insidious things that happen to Belinda season 1 that make her story so powerful. Like if you look on the page real estate of a character is never why I say yes to something. It's how much of the heart can be exposed. And I felt like she was all over the show season 1 and emotional. That's what I was drawn to. And so for me, I wanted to protect that for Mike. And a lot of times I have conversations where people don't want to look deeper in that way. And they just look on the surface and they're like, you know, there should be more Black people in this show. And it's just like, yeah, maybe. But we're telling a specific story and Mike is telling a specific story. If I had the pen in my hand, it'd be a different story. And so I want to be able to support him in that, because I do think there's value in the conversation that he is sparking amongst people about class, about, you know, luxury travel. And those spaces are very homogenous and, you know, what it means to have access and privilege. And so it's exciting to be able to be, you know, a co-conspirator with him in that way.
Like you said, you started seeing what Belinda was going to look like in season 3. we just got to see so much more of her personality. We got to see her be, scared and tough. And like you said, just almost because she was shadowing, I guess, not really working, but we got to see so much more of her personality. Was that fun to bring all of those aspects? Loved, her relationship with her son. We got to see her. Hopefully I'm not doing any spoilers here. People, if you haven't watched it.
I know. At this point.
Come on.
I said that the other day. Someone was just like, no spoilers. And I said, I've been carrying the secret of the show for 2 years.
Right?
So you need to run away and go fix it because I can't be bound anymore.
Exactly. If you haven't watched it by now, but getting to see her be sassy and funny and scared and tough and sexual and all of these things. It was, what did that feel like for you as you started reading what she got to do, what you got to do?
I mean, I just got so excited. I mean, all of those things were in her. And I said this in an interview the other day, you can go back to season 1 and see aspects or flashes of her personality throughout, and she had to bite her tongue so much season 1, and so she's just opening her mouth and she's just getting a little bit more air to breathe. And I do think that Belinda, she's a habitual people pleaser and she's never puts herself first, and so much of what we see season 3 is new to Belinda herself. She's never advocated for her needs. She's never had a one night stand on vacation. She's being able to audition this version of herself on vacation, which is kind of the mandate for vacation anyway. Like, let's go play pretend that we live like this all the time. And so it's such a joy to put her back on and let those parts of her that I've always known to be there to actually come to the surface and actually have some room to breathe. And Carrie Coon gave me such an amazing metaphor for what it's like to return to a character after a long time. She's like, Natasha, it's like putting on a wet bathing suit. It fits. It feels a little weird, but once you're in the water, it's fine. And I was like, Carrie, no one has ever. That is the best description, because it's like, I put her on. I was like, yeah, no, I remember her. And then when I showed up in Thailand, I was like, oh, this is home. I know where I am.
You're like, oh, she's a little uncomfortable and she's a little sticky, but oh my gosh, but that,
isn't that great?
I love that. That is so funny. How beautiful was it filming in Thailand?
It's unreal. It's unreal. And for a very specific reason, multiple reasons, but for me, a specific one. Like, Thailand has never been colonized and it's never been to war, which I didn't know. You walk around and it feels lighter there, and I'm always like, why is that? Like, what's going on? And I remember talking to one of the Thai crew members, and Fern was just like, we've never been colonized, we've never been to war, and the nickname for Thailand is the land of many smiles. And to move around that kind of world for 5.5 months, it changed. I was
going to say, how long you were there? You were there almost 6 months.
Yeah. Wow. It changes you. There's a lightness when your home is not in a constant state of trauma response. It's a beautiful country, and it was hot as all, but it definitely felt light there, if that makes sense. And it's beautiful. It's placid. It's fun. There's a seedy underbelly, but there's no judgment. There's just this openness there that, I hope to go back again soon. I made one return trip since we wrapped production for the premiere. And it was literally 48 hours in Bangkok. Don't recommend, because I spent more time in the air than I did on the ground. But I want to go back and just feel that again. It's such a reminder that, we can tap into that,
Yes. Did you guys have as much fun with each other as it looks like after the fact? Like I said, getting to see all of the hanging out pictures and everyone imitating Parker Posey's accent. You guys were so funny and so great doing all of the imitations that we're seeing on social. Was it really a fun group?
It really was. I got super close to Parker as well, and several of the other actors, and we're on a text chain. I saw a bunch last night. There was another event, and gearing up for award season, and there's genuine oh my God, hugs, and all of our collective publicists are like, could you guys talk to the mics? And we were just circled up being like, oh my God. We were just, playing catch up because we all have been so busy. But it really, does foster that kind of connection. I felt the same thing season one. There's no other production I've done that's like it, where you're kind of sequestered in this environment. Season one by circumstance, season two by location, or season two and three by location.
Yep.
Where you are all together, you're all expats in this country. You don't speak the native language, so you're eating together, you're working together, you're traveling together, you're sightseeing together, you're sharing who's got the, the 60 SPF, like I left my umbrella on set. Can you grab that? Oh my God, I love that, that linen dress. Where'd you get that? Oh, it was like 3 baht down at the corner. And like, you're swapping tips and tricks, and you know way too much about gastrointestinal issues. Who's got what and when. And
it's like being at the best camp ever.
It really is. I described that to my best friend who came up to set and visited me, and she was like, what do I expect? I was like, it's theater camp. It's theater camp. You don't have to walk around with any kind of deference. And I very much did. Day one, there was this cast dinner, and I'm neurospicy, and I love a wall, and I get very anxious, and everyone's walking. It's like, that's Parker, Walton Goggins. Oh my God, Leslie Bibb. And I was so nervous. And then Kuhn came up to me, and she was just like, we're all over there, and we're nervous because you did season one. So you need to come over there.
Yeah, you were the
OG.
You had the inside scoop.
But that was the day one. And from then on, it was just like, oh, we're all equals. We're all together in this. And it was just, their family. Yeah. A weird, fucked up family, but they're mine.
It makes us feel better since we've seen the behind the scenes photos. The on-screen family, crazy. So this your next project, or a project that you're working on now, I was going to ask you, like, how did you get to, adopting a TikTok project? But you let a little secret in with your dad being an early tech adopter. So it sounds like it's something that's the technology and the social platform, something you're very, very in tune to. Can you talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, I'm quite the techie nerd, but it's so funny. My relationship to TikTok, I'm such a voyeur, also a consequence of being neurospicy. And so I don't really engage with it, but I watch it almost like TV. And my connection to this viral TikTok, which is called Who the Fuck Did I Marry? By the amazing Teresa Johnson, whose TikTok handles Risa Tisa. It came about because and it has a White Lotus connection, actually. I was being tagged mercilessly in this TikTok because people in the world, audiences on TikTok, saw me as her. And I ignored it for the most part because I literally had just landed in Thailand. I was acclimating to set, making sure I had my lines, making sure I knew my way around, and, converting money, trying to figure out stuff. And I have a cousin a chat on my phone, like a iMessage group with 25 Rothwell cousins. And the TikTok infiltrated the cousin chat. And my cousin Derek posted this photo, which was like a mocked up movie poster with my face, a man I didn't know. And it had like, who the fuck did I marry? And they're so far off from what the industry is. So they literally thought it was real. They're like, are you doing this? And I was like, enough. So I was like, let me go see what this is about. So I went to TikTok to actually watch. And it was 50 episodes, 8 hours of just storytelling. And I was enraptured. It's the most radical act of vulnerability I've seen in a long time, of a woman telling a story about how she was swindled by someone she loved and married. And it was just the levels of deceit were so intricate. And so I told my team, I was just like, are these stories, is her story up for grabs? And they said it's very competitive. And I was like, well, I'll raise my hand and just see what happens. And I met with her over Zoom in Thailand.
Oh my gosh.
And I chatted with her, and I was just like, I know that there are a lot of heavy hitters who want to tell this story, but here's why I think I would be great. And it comes all the way back full circle. I love storytelling. And it was just so vulnerable and honest and funny and smart and sad. And it's just beautiful. And if you haven't have a chance, some brilliant person took all of the TikToks and turned them into Spotify playlists, so you can listen to it like a podcast.
Oh, okay.
Highly recommend. Put it on. Go
Okay.
on a walk.
Is it called "Who the Fuck Did I Marry"
Yes.
on the Spotify playlist?
Yes.
Okay, we'll get that out there.
Oh,
we'll get that out there for people.
So good. And
Okay.
yeah, she and I just connected, and then she chose Big Hattie Productions, which is my production company named after Hattie McDaniel.
I love it.
And so we've been working on that, and we're going to be shopping it around the summer.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. What, as a creator, as a producer, do you love all of the different platforms that are out there and the different ways that, like this, if she had been writing this, down on paper or typing it into a laptop and shopping it around, who knows where? I mean, it could be on some publicist's desk forever.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about just there's the overload of it and how do I dig through? But then there's also these pieces that we find.
It's incredible. It is direct to camera storytelling, and she got 500 million impressions and views. 500 million.
Wow.
Over 8 hours of content. So
wow.
She had executives scratching their heads all over the industry. Like, how did she get 500 million people seated to just someone talking? And I think that, to me, is just the power of storytelling and telling the truth. And, my favorite definition of comedy is the truth told quickly. And so she has these moments where she's playing with the pace of truth. It's slow, it's sad, and it's quick and funny. And it's so relatable. And I think, there's so many platforms, and it kind of feels like a deluge at a certain point. But I do think it does one thing that I think is so powerful. It reminds people that they're in charge of their own story. They are the hero of their own story. And so often we have to, or at least coming up anyway, have been told that I have to get permission to tell my story. And I think that can be so dangerous, because then who are the keepers of the story, and then who's allowed to tell the story, and when can they tell the story? So I do think these platforms are a way to sort of excavate those stories from the general public to get them out. I think some of them are worthy of, greater distribution, and I think we have systems for that. But I do think there's something about it's it's almost braver too, because I think about myself. I didn't come up with these kinds of technologies, but I would have never had the courage to even read my diary out loud. You mentioned like just writing it down. I wouldn't have and there are people out there that are literally using these platforms as a place to put their heart and their soul. So I do think it breeds a certain amount of courage that it's useful. And I think it can be really powerful for sure.
I do too. And I hope I have a high school daughter, but I hope that, like you said, that bravery and that vulnerability. I hope that, it makes these kids stronger. If one person says, I'm doing the same thing, I feel the same way, that negates 1,000 people that say you're stupid. Why would anyone want to listen to your story? And, and that's where, like you said, that fear of putting it out there. One person says, you helped me, or I feel the same way. That's all that matters.
That's all that matters. It's life-changing.
Yeah. And we're teaching them to pay attention to that one voice versus the 1,000 negative voices, which I think is just such a huge, powerful tool.
It goes back to what we said about feeling seen, right?
Yes. Yeah. Pay attention to the one positive, not the 1,000 negative.
Yes.
It's a lesson for all of us. We all
truly
to learn day after day after day. But I think some of these platforms and these ways that these kids get these voices out there, it's fantastic. And us as consumers, us as viewers, it's just such a gift. I love the sensation of that. Like, how would we know this person if it wasn't for this? I remember seeing this is, again, going to date me so badly. It was the LeBron James documentary that came out right when, it was called More Than a Game. I think it was his first or second season in the NBA. And I mean, of course, there's this wonderful story. And he's this amazing kid who's playing basketball. But all I could think about was that coach, that neighborhood coach who, was a teacher and didn't, had great basketball players. But the one kid who had to help buy shoes, and he had to drive them, and he had to do all these things. And like, we wouldn't know who that is if it wasn't for
Nope.
that one person. We wouldn't know about this story, if it wasn't,
Yeah.
for TikTok, and now for you bringing it to, and it's like those, I don't know if that's the butterfly, if whatever those little
Yeah.
effects are, but that's just, it's fascinating. It's just
It's
fascinating.
fascinating. And it feels, for me, I think there's so much potential in these platforms to do good in this way, like
Mm-hmm.
coincidentally and also like intentionally. And so I think that is sort of where I'm finding excitement now, where so many of studios, the conversations are trying to figure out, like, how can we intentionally go into these spaces and use them to
Yeah.
reach more people. And not
Yes.
all of those desires are nefarious, but I think it's recognizing 500 million people, that's powerful.
Yes.
That is
Yes.
power. That is
Yes.
power. And I think, my hope is that the power remains in the hands of the creators and not just
Mm-hmm.
those that are trying to, commodify the gifts of those vulnerability, that vulnerability.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause, and that fight, those 500 million, I mean, that's what we used to, the back in the day called, that's a word of mouth.
Yeah.
That's, that's
Yes.
sharing, that's telling. And then somebody
Yeah.
was like, oh my gosh, my friend told me to listen to this. I trust what she says. I'm going to go watch it.
Yeah.
And
That's my
that is
cousin
power.
Derek putting it in the cousin
Yes.
chat.
Yes.
I would have never known. I would have never
Derek,
known.
thank
Yay,
you.
thank you.
I love that. Is there anything else? I know we've been talking for so long. I could talk to you all day.
I
Is
know, you're so
there,
delightful.
oh my gosh, you too. What else is coming? What else? Is there anything else that you can share with us that you're working on?
Not that I can share. I hate how mysterious the industry has to make me sometimes.
Yes, we
But
know.
I am so excited about the Risa project and the other things
Good.
that Big Hattie has cooking. And yeah, I'm coming off of this massive sort of press run for White Lotus. And so the dust is settling. And so it's nice to be
Yeah.
home and just take it in, because I'm still at the end of the day, that 10-year-old girl doing weird comic voices in front of my dad's VHS camera, like that's, and so this feels really kind of like wild. And
Yeah.
yeah, I'm just trying to stay in a place of gratitude with it all, and grateful for
Good,
this
good.
conversation. And
And enjoying this time. That's so great. Do you like to, when you've come off of a long acting piece, do you like to then write or then produce? Do you like to like deliberately change hats kind of as big projects come to an end?
yeah, I mean, I try to let the things that come across my desk dictate my entry point, which is really
Mm.
fun. If I
Mm-hmm.
read something and I'm like, oh my God, I really want to act in this, or if I really want to direct it, or if, oh, I want to produce it,
Mm-hmm.
the project usually dictates. But I think where I find myself right now, I'm trying to sort of return to me, because I want to fill my cup so I can give in any aspect. So it's
Mm-hmm.
usually after a big project, I can go to a silent meditation retreat, or pick up a hobby. Right now, I'm trying to figure out whether or not I want to do clay pots or Legos. So we'll see what the summer has in store. But
I love it.
yeah,
I love it. Well, that's perfect. A perfect segue. We always like to end with, is there anything that you're watching or reading kind of in your time off that you'd like to share with us? Maybe it's Legos. I don't think anybody's ever shared Legos
yeah,
with
I
us.
think it might be Legos.
Yeah.
I have ADHD, and so finding something with my hands really does help a little bit. So yeah, maybe some Legos.
I love it. I love it. Do you like the Lego movies?
I do.
They're fun.
But there's like a Lego competition show that I can't remember the name of, that I was like, ooh, that's cool. Maybe I can do that with my hands.
No, I love it. I'm a Lego person too. Well, Natasha, thank you so much. This was so much fun. I apologize for the technology
No
issues
worries.
at the beginning, but what a fun conversation. Thanks for taking the time.
Of course. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to In Her Words. We hope you'll join us at womeninentertainment.com and go to our Substack for extended interviews and behind-the-scenes access.